What if we saw every element of a song, even the smallest little plucky ear candy, as a piece of music on itself? Music, in a broad sense, is a structured combination of sounds that expresses emotion. It can be beautiful, inspiring, funny, and in other cases, it also can be ugly, very experimental, and noisy. With that in mind, any sound in a song is, well, essentially a moment in a larger structure. And in a way, it carries its own emotional structure too, on its own. Without going too deep in philosophy, in the theory of affect, Masumi suggests that this concept denotes an intensity, something that comes before rational thought, and that it moves us in a way that resonates with our own experience and, of course, with emotion. In this sense, the individual components of a song are affective, and when they are put together in a larger structure, they start creating relationships, movement, more complex emotions than the ones that they contain, and, well, music. Now, of course, any philosophy major can correct me, but the thing is, every small sound has a huge emotional potential, and where the hell I'm going with this? Well, simply put, any sound you create, being samples, resamples, synth patches, and so on, contain an emotion that work with other sounds to create more emotions and music. But they also can work by themselves. This, at least for me, is the mindset for music production and sound design. Take this small loop for example. It has its parts, it sounds nice, and we can identify its emotions. But if we take only the pad, it still works. Now, of course, that also has to do with the chord progression, which is kinda melancholic, but let's just listen to one single note. The song has a structure on its own. It's evolving, it's slow, it's unstable, it's broken. And on themselves, those characteristics are also melancholic. Okay, but this is a full sound. It occupies a lot of frequencies on the frequency spectrum, and it's given us enough time so we can feel these emotions. So what happens to the smallest little pluck that I mentioned at the beginning? Well, let's go back to the loop and let's create one for this context. Right now, it's simple, basic, and frankly, it doesn't tell us too much. Now, we can overthink it and define an emotion based on this simplicity, but it's easier if we start changing some parameters. On its own, if we increase the resonance, it becomes funkier. If we add a second oscillator and detune it, again, it starts breaking apart in a nice emotive way. If we make it pluckier, it gets stronger, and if we add distortion now, it's a fussy, angry little creature. Of course, if we go back to the funkier one and we use it on this melancholic context, two things can happen. One, it may not work. Or two, it will change a little bit of the tone of the piece. Listen to this. The funky little sound contrasts with the other elements of the song. And in a way, this makes the emotional tone even stronger. Like almost an irony that takes us off guard. This is like building the archetypical sad clown. So on its own, it can even be funny. But if you take that emotion and combine it with the other elements, you get something new. But let's go back to simple patchmaking. Music is combining all of these different emotional structures to create something bigger, and that's where you need creativity. Because of that, when I make presets, my mindset is to give options, like an emotional palette of sounds and single structures that then the musician can combine together or with other sounds. You see, this mindset has opened sound design for me, making me love the process of preset making and finding a lot of joy in the act of sometimes just pressing one key to see what happens. course, as I said, with longer and busier sounds, you get more information and time to process the kind of emotion that you're building, like this big, angry, stumpy bass. But still, every preset is done with an emotion in mind, and that way it becomes so much easier to create them with a concept in mind. Now, what's the secret? Well, you may already guessed it. Every decision that you make when you're creating a patch also contains an emotion on itself. For instance, when we talk about dark or bright sounds, detune oscillators, glassy, grainy stuff, and so on, we are not only describing sound, we are also evoking different ways on how we feel about those sounds. Darker sounds are somber, or subtle, or scarier, or whatever, and well, the simplest way to create them is by taking away the high frequencies with filters. Now, this is also true for movement. Take, for instance, this classic brass sound. Brasses have always been reminiscent of something epic, inspiring, whatever, because they are full of energy. But part of this energy also has to do with a movement that pushes you forward. So the typical envelope for a brass synth is something like this. Now, I could be yapping all day about how every sound that ever existed conveys a different emotion, and while that's a fascinating topic, I think that's for another video. I wanted to share a mindset for the creation of sound, even if you are just making a preset for the sake of making a preset. As I said, this opened up some design for me, letting me create sound with an emotional state of mind that makes everything just flow more naturally. So I hope you at least find this interesting, and if you did, please give a like to the video. Thank you so much for watching, I will see you next time, and bye bye!